Emma didn't even see the headlights at first. One moment she was stumbling backward off the curb, Marcus's palm still hot against her shoulder where he'd pushed, and the next there were twin beams of light bearing down on her like the eyes of some chrome predator. The screech of brakes cut through the downpour, but she knew there wasn't enough time. Then an arm locked around her waist and yanked her backward with such force the air rushed from her lungs. She collided with something solid. A chest. A man's chest. The car fishtailed past them so close, she felt the spray of water from its tires, and then everything went still except for the rain, and her own ragged breathing and the steady thud of a heartbeat that wasn't hers against her spine. "You all right?" The voice came from above her, deep and calm, in a way that seemed impossible given what had just happened. Emma tried to turn, but the arm around her waist, strong, unyielding, didn't immediately release. "I asked if you're all right." Still calm. But now there was something underneath it. Something dark. Yes, I think so." Her voice shook. Everything shook. The arm loosened, and she turned to face her rescuer. Even in the rain and the dim glow of the streetlights, she could see he was striking in a way that made her breath catch for entirely different reasons. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face that belonged on Renaissance marble except for the scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and he was looking at her with an intensity that made her feel exposed despite being fully clothed. But he wasn't looking at her anymore. His gaze had shifted past her shoulder, and something happened to his expression. Something that made the temperature drop despite the summer rain. "Did he push you?" Emma blinked. "What?" "The man behind you." His voice had gone quieter. That was somehow worse than if he'd yelled. "Did he push you?" She didn't have to turn around to know Marcus was still there. She could feel his presence the way you feel a storm coming. "It was an accident," Marcus said quickly. Too quickly. "We were just talking, and I'm going to ask her one more time." The stranger's eyes hadn't left Marcus. "Did he push you into traffic?" Emma's throat tightened. She'd spent 3 months getting out of her relationship with Marcus. 3 months of him showing up at her apartment, her work, her sister's house. 3 months of him texting, calling, leaving notes on her car. 3 months of, "I just want to talk," and "You owe me an explanation," and "You're making a big mistake." 3 months of being afraid. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder. "Yes, he pushed me." The stranger's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over Emma's shoulders in one fluid motion. She realized she was shaking. Whether from cold or shock or fear, she couldn't tell. "Get in." "The car." He nodded toward a sleek black sedan parked at the curb, engine still running. A driver sat behind the wheel, expression carefully neutral. I don't know you," Emma managed. "And you do know him." The stranger gestured at Marcus without looking at him. "How's that working out?" "Fair point." "Emma, don't be stupid." Marcus's voice had taken on that edge she knew too well. The one that came right before things got worse. "You're really going to get in a car with some random guy? After everything I've done for you?" "Everything you've..." Emma's voice cracked. "You just tried to kill me." "It was an accident. You know I'd never..." "Get in the car." The stranger's voice cut through Marcus's protestations like a blade. He still wasn't looking at Emma's ex. He was looking at Emma, and his expression had shifted into something almost gentle. "Please." She didn't know why she trusted him. Maybe it was because he'd saved her life. Maybe it was because Marcus was still standing there, still making excuses, still acting like shoving her into traffic was just another thing they needed to talk through. Maybe it was because this stranger's eyes held something she hadn't seen in a long time, genuine concern for whether she was okay. Emma walked to the car. The driver opened the back door without a word. "Emma!" Marcus started forward. The stranger moved so fast Emma barely tracked it. One moment he was standing by the curb, The next, he was between her and Marcus, and though he hadn't laid a hand on her ex, Marcus had gone completely still. "Walk away," the stranger said softly. "Look, I don't know who you think you are. Walk away while you still can." Something in those words made the hair on the back of Emma's neck stand up. This wasn't a threat the way Marcus threatened, all bluster and volume and fists through drywall. This was something else entirely. This was a promise. Marcus must have heard it too, because his face went pale. He took one step back, then another, then turned and disappeared into the rain. The stranger waited until Marcus was completely out of sight before turning back to Emma. His expression softened again, and she found herself wondering how someone could shift between dangerous and gentle so seamlessly. "You're safe," he said simply. Then he climbed into the car beside her, and they pulled away from the curb. Emma should have been terrified. She was in a car with a complete stranger, wearing his jacket, driving to God knew where. But the terror that had been her constant companion since Marcus pushed her felt muted now, pushed back by sheer exhaustion and shock. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "Hospital. You need to be checked out." "I'm fine." He glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "You nearly got hit by a car." "You pulled me back in time." "Barely." Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, but not at her. "We're going to the hospital." Emma looked down at Oi, her hands. They were still shaking. "I can't afford... It's handled. You can't just... I can." He said it with such finality that Emma knew arguing would be pointless. They drove in silence for a moment. Emma studied him from the corner of her eye. Now that she wasn't in immediate danger, she could appreciate just how attractive he was. The kind of attractive that made women do stupid things. But there was something else about him, too. Something in the way the driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror with barely concealed deference. Something in the cut of that expensive suit, and the way he wore authority, like a second skin. "What's your name?" she asked. He seemed to consider whether to answer. "Dante." "Dante." She tested the name. It fit him. "I'm Emma." "I know." Her head snapped up. "How? Your boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, was shouting it, multiple times." Dante's mouth twitched in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Hard to miss." That made sense. Of course that made sense. There was no reason for the little flutter of unease in her stomach. "Thank you," Emma said quietly, "for saving me. I don't know how to repay." "You don't owe me anything. I owe you my life." Dante turned to look at her fully for the first time since they'd gotten in the car. His eyes were even darker up close, nearly black, and they seemed to see right through her. "Then don't go back to him," he said. Emma swallowed hard. "I wasn't planning to." "Good." The hospital visit was surreal. Emma was whisked through triage with an efficiency that felt almost suspicious, checked over by a doctor who seemed nervous in Dante's presence, and given a clean bill of health within the hour. Just some bruises forming where Dante had grabbed her, the doctor said. Ironic that the only injuries from the whole ordeal came from the man who'd saved her. Dante waited for her the entire time. When she emerged from the examination room, he was standing by the window, phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. He ended the call the moment he saw her. "All right?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Just bruises." His jaw tightened when his eyes dropped to her wrist, where fingerprint-shaped marks were already darkening her pale skin. His fingerprints. "I'm sorry," he said. "For saving my life?" Emma shook her head. "Don't be ridiculous. For hurting you." There was something in his voice that made her chest feel tight. She pulled his jacket, which she was still wearing, closer around herself. "It's fine," she said softly. "Really." Dante looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just nodded. "Come on, I'll take you home." The drive back was quieter. Emma gave the driver her address, and if Dante noticed, she lived in the kind of neighborhood where car alarms went off regularly, and the streetlights were more often broken than working. He didn't comment. When they pulled up in front of her building, a squat brown apartment complex that had seen better decades, Emma moved to take off his jacket. "Keep it," Dante said. "I can't." "You're still shaking." She was. She hadn't even realized. "I'll return it," Emma promised. "There's no need," but she could tell from his tone that he wouldn't argue if she insisted. Emma clutched the jacket tighter, breathing in the scent of expensive cologne and something else. Something distinctly him. "Thank you," she said again, "for everything." Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was simple, heavy cardstock with just a name and a phone number. No company, no title, nothing else. "If he comes back," Dante said, pressing the card into her hand, "call me." Emma looked down at the card, then back up at him. Why do you care?" Something shifted in his expression. Something that made her breath catch. "Because I watched him push you into traffic and barely got there in time," Dante said quietly. "And the idea of him getting another chance to hurt you makes me want to do things I probably shouldn't say out loud." Emma's pulse kicked up. "You don't even know me." "No," he agreed. "I don't." But he didn't take the card back. And when Emma climbed out of the car and walked to her building, she felt his eyes on her the entire way. She turned at the door to wave, and he was still watching, his face unreadable through the tinted window. The car didn't pull away until she was safely inside. Emma didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw headlights, felt Marcus's hands on her shoulder, heard the screech of brakes, felt Dante's arm around her waist, solid and sure and safe. She sat at her kitchen table as dawn broke, staring at the business card. She'd looked up the name, of course. Dante Rossi. The search results had been illuminating and terrifying. Depending on which websites you believed, Dante Rossi was either a successful businessman with his fingers in half the commercial real estate in the city, or he was something much darker. Mafia, some of the less reputable sites whispered. Organized crime. Dangerous. Emma should have been horrified. She should have thrown the card away and thanked whatever deity was listening that she'd gotten away unscathed. Instead, she found herself tracing the embossed letters of his name with her fingertip. Her phone buzzed. Emma's heart leapt into her throat before she even looked at the screen. "Marcus. We need to talk. Last night was a misunderstanding." She deleted the message without responding. Another came through immediately. "Don't ignore me, Em. You know I didn't mean it." Delete. "I'm coming over." Her blood ran cold. She looked at the locks on her door, flimsy, cheap, the kind that came standard in buildings where the landlord did the bare minimum. Marcus had a key once. She'd changed the locks after they broke up, but that wouldn't stop him if he really wanted. In. It never had before. Emma's fingers shook as she picked up Dante's card. She shouldn't call him. She barely knew him. Everything she'd read online suggested getting involved with Dante Rossi was a spectacularly bad idea. But Marcus was on his way, and she was alone, and she could still feel those hands on her shoulder pushing her toward the headlights, and she dialed. He picked up on the first ring. Emma. Just her name, but something in her chest loosened at the sound of his voice. "He's coming here," she said without preamble. "Marcus. He texted that he's coming over and I—" Her voice cracked. "I don't think my locks will keep him out." Address. She'd given it to him last night, but she recited it again anyway. "Stay away from the door," Dante said. "I'm 10 minutes out." "You don't have to— 10 minutes, Emma. Stay on the line with me." So she did. She stood in the middle of her tiny living room, phone pressed to her ear, listening to Dante's steady breathing on the other end. He didn't try to fill the silence with useless platitudes. He just stayed there, a presence in the dark, and somehow that made her feel less alone. 6 minutes later, someone pounded on her door. "Emma, open up!" She flinched hard. That's him? Dante's voice had gone cold. Yes. I'm 5 minutes away, don't open the door. I won't. But Marcus wasn't giving up. The pounding grew louder. Emma, I know you're in there. We need to talk about last night. You tried to kill me. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. It was an accident. God, why are you being so dramatic? I just want to talk. Go away, Marcus. Not until you open this door. Something slammed against the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Emma backed up until she hit the wall. Emma, Dante's voice cut through her rising panic. Listen to me. Is there a bedroom? A room with a door you can lock? Yes. Go there. Lock yourself in. I'm 3 minutes out. Emma ran. She heard Marcus hit the door again as she threw herself into her bedroom and twisted the pathetic little lock on that door too. It wouldn't hold. She knew it wouldn't hold. But it was something. I'm in, she whispered. Good. Stay there. The pounding had stopped. For a moment, Emma thought maybe Marcus had given up. Then she heard the distinctive scrape of metal on metal. Her blood turned to ice. He's picking the lock, she breathed. Dante swore, sharp, vicious Italian that needed no translation. 1 minute. The scraping continued. Emma pressed herself into the corner farthest from the door, phone clutched to her chest like a lifeline. She heard the front door open. Heard Marcus's footsteps in her apartment, loud and angry and getting closer. Emma, stop being childish! The bedroom doorknob rattled. Emma! The front door slammed open with such force Emma heard it hit the wall. There was a beat of shocked silence, and then... Get out! Dante's voice, cold and deadly, and more terrifying than she'd ever heard anything in her life. Who the hell are you? Marcus demanded, but Emma could hear the fear underneath the bravado. The man who's going to give you one chance to walk out of here breathing. This is between me and Emma. She doesn't want to talk to you. You don't speak for her. She called me because she's afraid of you. That speaks for itself. Emma's bedroom door burst open so suddenly she cried out, but it wasn't Marcus who appeared. It was Dante, and the expression on his face made her knees weak. He crossed the room in 3 strides and positioned himself between her and the door, and even though Marcus was still out in the living room, Emma felt safer than she had in months. Stay behind me, Dante said quietly. Emma nodded, even though he couldn't see her. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face red with anger. But he stopped dead when he saw Dante standing there. Whatever he saw in Dante's expression made the color drain from his cheeks. You need to leave, Marcus said, but his voice shook. This is my girlfriend's apartment. Ex-girlfriend, Emma corrected from behind Dante. Her voice was stronger now. I broke up with you 3 months ago, Marcus. We're just going through a rough patch. You pushed me into traffic. It was an accident. You picked the lock on my door. Emma's voice rose, all the fear and anger of the past months boiling over. You've been stalking me for months, showing up everywhere I go, texting me constantly, ignoring every time I tell you to leave me alone. That's not love, Marcus. That's obsession. Marcus's face twisted into something ugly. After everything I did for you, get out. Dante's voice was so quiet Emma almost didn't hear it. But Marcus did. You can't make me... Dante moved so fast Emma couldn't track it. One moment he was standing still, the next his hand was locked around Marcus's throat, slamming him back against the doorframe. Marcus's eyes went wide, his hands coming up to claw at Dante's wrist, but Dante didn't budge. Touch her again and die, Dante said, each word precise and clear. Look at her again and you'll wish you died. If I see your face anywhere near her, anywhere near this building, anywhere in her life at all, there won't be enough of you left to identify. Marcus made a strangled sound. Do you understand me? Marcus managed a jerky nod. Dante held him there for one more long moment, then released him. Marcus collapsed against the doorframe, gasping, one hand to his throat. "Get out," Dante repeated. "Now." Marcus scrambled backward so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet. Emma heard him stumbling through the living room, heard the front door slam, heard an engine start and tires screech. Then silence. Dante turned to face her, and the cold fury in his expression melted away so fast it left her dizzy. He looked her over carefully, taking inventory. "Are you hurt?" Emma shook her head. She couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just happened, couldn't reconcile the man who'd just terrorized her ex-boyfriend with the one who was now looking at her like she might break if he breathed wrong. "Emma!" Dante took a careful step toward her. "Breathe." She sucked in a breath, then another. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it was just adrenaline, not fear. She was safe. Marcus was gone. She was safe. "Thank you," she whispered. Dante's expression did something complicated. "You don't need to thank me. You came. You—" Her voice broke. "Nobody's ever—" She didn't finish the sentence. Couldn't. But Dante seemed to understand anyway. He closed the distance between them slowly, giving her time to back away if she wanted. She didn't. And when he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch so careful it made her chest ache, Emma found herself leaning into it. "He won't bother you again," Dante said quietly. "How can you be sure?" "Because I keep my promises." Emma believed him. God help her. She believed him. And maybe that should have terrified her. But right now, standing in her bedroom with this dangerous man looking at her like she was something precious, all she felt was grateful. "Your door's broken," Dante said after a moment. "The front one. He kicked it in." "Of course he did." Emma laughed, but it came out shaky. "That's fine. I'll call my landlord. I'll handle it." "You can't just—" "Emma." He said her name like it meant something. "Let me handle it." She should argue. She should insist on doing it herself. She should maintain some semblance of independence. But she was so tired, and he was offering, and maybe just this once it would be okay to let someone else fix things. "Okay," she said quietly. Dante nodded. Then, to her surprise, he pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking rapid Italian to whoever was on the other end. When he hung up, he looked back at her. "Someone will be here within the hour to fix the door and install better locks, commercial grade, and a security system. I can't afford— You're not paying for it. Dante." "Emma." He stepped closer. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Please, let me do this." There was something in his voice, almost pleading, which seemed impossible from a man like him. But she heard it anyway, and something in her chest cracked open. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care so much about someone you just met?" Dante was quiet for a long moment. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing over her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "Because I saw him push you," he said finally, "and I barely caught you in time. And the idea that I might not have, that you might have—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I can't stop thinking about it, about how close it was, about what would have happened if I'd been 2 seconds slower." Emma's breath caught. "But you weren't." "But I could have been." His thumb traced her cheekbone again, and Emma felt herself swaying toward him like a compass finding north. "And now that I know you, now that I've seen what he is and what he's done to you, I can't walk away. I won't." "You barely know me," Emma whispered. "Then let me fix that." It wasn't a question exactly, but it was an invitation. And Emma, who had spent the last 3 months running from one man's obsession, found herself wanting to run toward another man's protection. Maybe that made her stupid. Maybe she was trading one danger for another. But standing there with Dante's hand on her face and his dark eyes looking at her like she mattered, Emma couldn't bring herself to care. "Okay," she said again. Dante's expression softened into something that might have been relief. Then his phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with obvious reluctance. "I need to go," he said. "But the repair crew will be here soon. They'll fix everything. And I'm leaving someone outside to watch the building. That's not necessary. It is. His voice left no room for argument. Until I'm sure he's gone for good, someone will be watching. You won't even know they're there. Emma should have protested, should have argued about privacy and independence, and how this was too much. But the truth was, the idea of someone watching out for her, of not being alone in this, made her weak with relief. "Thank you," she said instead. Dante leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead, brief and chaste and somehow more intimate than anything Marcus had ever done. "Lock the door behind me," he said against her skin. "New locks will be installed within the hour." Then he was gone, and Emma was left standing in her bedroom, heart racing, wondering what she'd just gotten herself into. The repair crew arrived 43 minutes later. 3 men who worked with efficient silence, replacing her broken door, installing locks that looked like they belonged on a bank vault, and setting up a security system that probably cost more than her car. They were done in under 2 hours and refused to take a tip when they left. Emma's phone buzzed as soon as they were gone. "New code is 0408, your birthday. You can change it if you want." She stared at the message. He knew her birthday. How did he know her birthday? "How do you know my birthday?" The response came immediately. "Called in a favor. Wanted to make sure I knew everything about the man who hurt you. Your information came up too." Emma should have been disturbed by that. Should have been worried about this stranger who had access to her personal information, who had people who could get it for him, who could snap his fingers and make things happen with terrifying efficiency. Instead, she texted back, "Thank you." Dinner tomorrow? Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Is this a date? Do you want it to be? Emma bit her lip. This was crazy. All of this was crazy. She'd known Dante for less than 24 hours. Everything she'd read online suggested he was dangerous. Getting involved with him was probably the worst decision she could make. "Yes," she typed. 7 p.m. I'll pick you up. Emma set her phone down and looked around her apartment. New door, new locks, new security system. A guard she couldn't see but knew was there. And a date tomorrow with a man who'd threatened to kill for her. She should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in 3 months, she felt safe. Dante picked her up at exactly 7. Emma had spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out what to wear, eventually settling on a simple black dress that was nice without trying too hard. When she opened the door, the new, heavily reinforced door, and saw him standing there in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been made for him, which it probably had, her mouth went dry. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Emma felt herself flush. "Thank you. You look dangerous, powerful. Like every bad decision she'd ever wanted to make." "Nice." His mouth twitched in amusement. "Nice? Very nice? I'll take it." The restaurant was the kind of place Emma had never been to before. The kind where there was no menu, because the chef just brought you whatever he'd made that day. The kind where the waiters moved like ghosts and every surface gleamed. The kind where one meal probably cost what she made in a week. They were seated at a private table in the back, partially screened from the rest of the restaurant by an ornate wooden partition. Dante held her chair for her, and when his hand brushed her shoulder as he pushed it in, Emma felt electricity race down her spine. "This is too much," she said when they were alone. "It's dinner." "Dante..." "Emma." He reached across the table and took her hand. The touch sent warmth flooding through her. "Let me do this, please." There was that word again. Please. Like he was the one asking for a favor, not the other way around. "Okay," Emma said softly. Dante smiled, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger, less dangerous. Made her forget for a moment all the things she'd read online about who he was and what he did. They talked through dinner. Emma learned that Dante had been born in Italy, but raised here, that he spoke 4 languages, that he had a sister he adored who lived in Milan. She learned that he liked old movies and hated modern art and had strong opinions about coffee. She learned that he listened when she talked, really listened, his dark eyes focused on her like she was the only person in the world. And she told him things too. About growing up with a single mom who worked 2 jobs. About putting herself through college while waitressing nights. About her job at the nonprofit downtown, helping women who'd left abusive relationships. About Marcus, and how she'd thought he was different at first. How by the time she realized what he really was, she'd already been in too deep. I kept thinking I could fix it, Emma said quietly, staring at her wine glass. That if I just explained better, or gave him one more chance, or tried harder. She shook her head. I was stupid. You weren't stupid. Dante's voice was firm. You were hopeful. There's a difference. Hope that nearly got me killed. He nearly got you killed. That's on him, not you. Emma looked up at him. You barely know me, and you've done more to protect me than he ever did in 2 years of dating. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Maybe that says more about him than anything else. Or maybe it says something about you. Like what? Like you're not what people say you are. Dante went very still. What do people say I am? Emma hesitated, but they'd been honest so far, and she didn't want to start hiding things now. Dangerous, she said finally. Connected. Mafia. She said the last word quietly, watching his face for a reaction. Dante didn't flinch. Didn't deny it. Just watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. And if it's true, he asked softly. Emma's pulse kicked up. Is it? Would it matter? I don't know, she admitted. Should it? Dante leaned forward, his hand tightening around hers. I'm not a good man, Emma. I won't lie to you about that. The things I do, the world I live in, it's not safe. It's not clean. And you deserve better than to be pulled into it. Then why ask me to dinner? Because I'm also not good enough to stay away. Emma's breath caught. There was something raw in his voice, something honest and wanting that made her ache. I'm not asking you to stay away, she whispered. You should. But I'm not. They stared at each other across the table. Emma could feel her heart pounding, could feel the weight of this moment, this choice. She could walk away right now, thank him for dinner, for saving her, for everything, and go back to her life. Stay safe. Or she could lean in, step into the danger, trust that this man who'd threatened to kill for her might actually be worth the risk. Tell me about your work, Emma said instead of running. Your real work. Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he sat back, and when he spoke, his voice was careful. I'm a businessman, he said. Import-export primarily, real estate, investments. All legal? Most of it. And the rest? His mouth quirked. Let's just say I have diverse interests. That's not an answer. No, Dante agreed. It's not. He wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But Emma found that she could accept that. Because whatever else he was, whatever else he did, he'd saved her life. He'd protected her. He'd treated her with more care and respect in 2 days than Marcus had in 2 years. Okay, she said quietly. Dante blinked. Okay? I won't ask for details. Not yet. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't lie to me. If I ask you something directly, either tell me the truth or tell me you can't answer. But don't lie. Dante's expression softened. I can do that. Then we're okay. They finished dinner in easier conversation after that. Dante told her about a restaurant in Rome his sister had taken him to that served the best carbonara he'd ever had. Emma told him about the time she'd accidentally dyed her hair green while trying to go blonde. They laughed together, and Emma couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this light. When they left the restaurant, Dante's hand found the small of her back, guiding her through the door. The touch was possessive and protective all at once, and Emma found she didn't mind. The drive back to her apartment was quiet, comfortable. When they pulled up outside her building, Dante walked her to her door like it was the most natural thing in the world. Thank you, Emma said, turning to face him. For dinner. For everything. Thank you for saying yes. They stood there in the dim hallway, close enough that Emma could feel the warmth radiating from him. Close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Close enough to kiss. Emma wanted him to kiss her. Wanted it with an intensity that should have scared her. But Dante didn't move, just watched her with an expression that made her feel seen in a way she never had been before. "Can I see you again?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "Tomorrow?" "Isn't that too soon?" "Not for me," Emma smiled. "Then yes. Tomorrow." Dante raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Old-fashioned and intimate and perfect. "Good night, Emma." "Good night, Dante." She didn't go inside until his car pulled away, and when she did, she touched her fingers to the spot he'd kissed and smiled like a teenager with her first crush. Maybe this was crazy. Maybe she was trading one danger for another. But standing there in her safe apartment with its new locks and security system, thinking about the man who'd put them there, Emma couldn't bring herself to regret it. 3 weeks passed like a dream. Dante was everything Marcus hadn't been. Attentive, without being suffocating. Protective, without being controlling. He took her to dinner, to the theater, to a jazz club where a woman with a voice like smoke sang songs that made Emma's heart ache. He held her hand in public, pulled out her chair, opened doors. Old-fashioned in the best ways, and he kept his promise. When Emma asked questions about his work, he either answered honestly, "I can't tell you that yet," or gave her pieces of the truth. She learned that yes, his business dealings weren't entirely legal, that yes, he had dangerous connections, that yes, the rumors online weren't entirely wrong, but she also learned that he donated to her nonprofit anonymously, that he'd helped 3 different women from her shelter find safe housing when their abusers came looking, that his sister was getting married next month and he was terrified of giving the toast, that he was human underneath the danger, with fears and hopes, and a surprising sweet tooth for Italian pastries. Emma was falling for him. She knew it and couldn't stop it, and wasn't sure she wanted to. On their 5th date, Dante kissed her. They'd just left a movie, something action-packed that Emma hadn't really watched because she'd been too aware of Dante's presence beside her, his hand holding hers in the dark. When they got back to her apartment, he walked her to her door like always. But this time, when Emma turned to say goodnight, he cupped her face in both hands and looked at her like she was something precious. "Can I kiss you?" he asked quietly. Emma's heart was going to beat out of her chest. "Yes." He kissed her like she was fragile, like she might break, soft and careful and so gentle it made her eyes sting. Emma melted into it, her hands coming up to grip his lapels, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," Dante murmured against her lips. "Covered in rain and almost hit by a car? Beautiful, and brave, and mine." The possessiveness in that last word should have bothered her. With Marcus, it would have. But with Dante, it just made warmth bloom in her chest. "Yours?" Emma asked, though her heart was already answering. "If you'll have me." She kissed him again instead of answering with words, poured everything she was feeling into it, gratitude and desire, and the terrifying, wonderful feeling of falling in love. When they broke apart this time, Dante's eyes had gone dark in a way that made heat pool in her stomach. "I should go," he said, voice rough. "You should," Emma agreed. Neither of them moved. "Emma?" "Stay." Dante's eyes fluttered closed. "You're killing me. I want you to stay." He opened his eyes and looked at her with such intensity it stole her breath. "Are you sure?" She'd never been more sure of anything. "Yes." What happened next was something Emma knew she'd remember for the rest of her life. Dante loved her like she was precious, like she mattered, like every touch was a promise. And when she finally fell asleep in his arms, safe and sated and happy, Emma let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. She woke to an empty bed and the smell of coffee. Emma padded out to her kitchen to find Dante at her stove, making breakfast in his dress pants and undershirt from last night, looking criminally domestic. He glanced up when she appeared and smiled in a way that made her melt. "Morning." "You cook?" Emma asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "I have many talents." His eyes heated. "As you discovered last night." Emma felt herself flush. Dante laughed and pulled her against him, kissing her temple. "Sit," he said. "Food's almost ready." They ate breakfast together, talking and laughing, and Emma couldn't remember ever being this happy. This felt right in a way nothing with Marcus ever had. Easy and natural and good. Her phone buzzed. Emma glanced at it and felt her blood run cold. Nice replacement. How long before he gets tired of you, too? Marcus. Dante noticed the change in her expression immediately. "What's wrong?" Emma showed him the message, hand shaking slightly. Dante's expression went absolutely lethal. "He's been quiet for 3 weeks, Emma said. "I thought he'd given up." "He hasn't." Dante was already pulling out his own phone. "The man I had watching your building reported someone matching his description hanging around yesterday, but he disappeared before anyone could confirm." "You still have someone watching?" "Always." Dante made a call, speaking rapid Italian. When he hung up, his jaw was tight. "Get dressed. You're coming with me." "Where?" "Somewhere safe. My apartment. He doesn't know where I live." Emma wanted to argue that she couldn't just abandon her life, her work, her apartment. But the text message sat there on her phone like a threat, and she remembered the feel of Marcus's hands pushing her, and suddenly Dante's apartment sounded perfect. She packed quickly. Dante helped, moving through her space with efficiency, grabbing things she would have forgotten. When they left, she noticed the man in the car across the street, Dante's guard, and felt a complicated mix of gratitude and unease. Dante's apartment was in one of the new high-rises downtown. The penthouse, naturally. All floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture, and the kind of expensive minimalism that suggested a designer's touch. But there were personal things, too. Photos of his sister. Books in Italian. A guitar in the corner that looked well-loved. "Make yourself at home," Dante said, setting her bag down. "I need to make some calls." He disappeared into what Emma assumed was his office. She wandered through the space, taking it in. This was where he lived, where he came after dropping her off each night. It felt intimate, being here, like he was showing her another piece of himself. Dante emerged an hour later looking grim. "What is it?" Emma asked. "Marcus filed a restraining order." Emma blinked. "What?" "Against me. Claims I threatened him, that I'm stalking you, that you're being held against your will. That's insane." "It's also clever." Dante's jaw was tight. "It means, if I go near him, I can be arrested. Which means, I can't handle him the way I want to." The implication was clear. Emma felt cold. "What do we do?" she asked. "You get your own restraining order against him. Document everything, the pushing, the stalking, all of it. I'll have my lawyers handle it." "Dante!" "Emma!" He crossed to her, cupping her face. "I won't let him hurt you. I don't care what I have to do. I don't want you getting in trouble because of me. Let me worry about that." They spent the day at his apartment. Dante worked while Emma tried to relax, but anxiety gnawed at her. Marcus wasn't going to give up. She'd known it logically, but seeing it play out was different. He would keep pushing until something broke. She just hoped it wouldn't be her. That evening, Dante ordered dinner in, Thai food from her favorite place, which he remembered from a conversation 2 weeks ago. They ate on his balcony, watching the city lights come on below, and for a few hours, Emma let herself pretend everything was normal. Her phone buzzed, another message from Marcus. "He'll get bored. They always do. And when he does, I'll be waiting." Emma showed Dante. His expression went cold. "Block his number." "I already did. He must have gotten a new phone." "Then we'll get you a new number." "He'll just find it again." Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "What if you disappeared?" Emma looked up sharply. "What?" "Not permanently. Just for a while. Somewhere he can't find you. Somewhere safe. I can't just leave my life. Emma. Dante took her hands. He's escalating. The texts, the restraining order. He's building up to something, I can feel it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. His eyes were dark with certainty. I know men like him. They don't give up. They just get more dangerous. Emma's throat tightened. So what? I'm supposed to hide forever? No, just until I can handle this. The way he said handle made Emma's blood run cold. Dante, I won't do anything that will come back on you, he said quickly. I promise. But I need you safe while I deal with him. By deal with him, you mean... I mean make sure he understands that you're off limits. Permanently. They stared at each other. Emma knew what he was offering, knew what he was capable of. And the terrible truth was, part of her was tempted. Part of her wanted to let this dangerous man handle her problem in whatever way he saw fit. But the other part of her, the part that worked at a nonprofit helping abused women, the part that believed in the law and justice and doing things the right way, that part recoiled. I can't, Emma whispered. I can't let you hurt him for me. Even if it keeps you safe. Even then. Dante's jaw tightened. For a moment, Emma thought he might argue, but then he just nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Then we do this your way. Restraining order. Police reports. Legal channels. You mean that? I do. He pulled her close. But Emma, if he touches you again, if he so much as looks at you wrong, all bets are off. Emma believed him, and maybe she should have been horrified by that. But wrapped in his arms, feeling safer than she had in months, all she could do was nod. Okay, she whispered. The restraining order was filed the next day. Emma gave her statement to Dante's lawyers, polished professional people who made her feel like she was actually being taken seriously. They documented everything. The push into traffic, the stalking, the texts, the broken lock. Built a case that should have been airtight. Marcus fought it, of course. Claimed Emma was lying, that she was being manipulated by her dangerous boyfriend, that he just wanted to talk to her. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the judge granted the temporary order pending a hearing in 2 weeks. Emma moved back to her apartment, though Dante wasn't happy about it. She compromised by letting him install additional security and keeping the guard outside. It felt like overkill, but it also felt safe. For 3 days, everything was quiet. Then Emma came home from work to find her apartment ransacked. Nothing stolen, just destroyed. Furniture overturned, dishes smashed, clothes torn, and on her bedroom mirror, written in what she desperately hoped was red paint. You'll never be rid of me. Emma stood in the doorway, shaking, and called Dante. He was there in 8 minutes. His expression when he saw her apartment was absolutely murderous. He pulled her against him, one hand cupping the back of her head, the other wrapped around her waist. You're okay, he murmured. You're okay. He was in my apartment, Dante. Her voice broke. I know. He pulled back to look at her face. Pack a bag. You're not staying here. Emma didn't argue this time. She packed while Dante called the police, documenting everything for the restraining order hearing. When the cops arrived, they were sympathetic but not particularly helpful. No signs of forced entry meant Marcus had probably picked the locks again. They'd noted in their report, they said. It would help at the hearing. But Emma wasn't thinking about the hearing. She was thinking about the message on her mirror. About how Marcus had been in her space, touching her things, threatening her even from a distance. She was thinking about how tired she was of being afraid. Dante drove her back to his apartment in silence. When they got inside, Emma collapsed on his couch and tried not to cry. She was so tired of crying over Marcus. So tired of letting him take up space in her head. I'm sorry, Dante said quietly, sitting beside her. For what? For not being there. For letting him. You can't be everywhere at once. Emma leaned into him. And you did everything you could. This isn't your fault. Feels like it. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Dante's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, and answered. Yes? He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. When? Another pause. Send me the address. He hung up and looked at Emma. They found him, Dante said. Emma's heart lurched. Found who? Marcus. He's at a bar downtown. My people have eyes on him. Emma's pulse kicked up. What are you going to do? Dante's expression was unreadable. I'm going to go talk to him. Dante? I'm just going to talk, Emma. That's all. But the way he said it made her not believe him. Emma grabbed his arm. Please, she said. Please don't do anything you can't take back. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Then he leaned down and kissed her forehead. Stay here, he said. Lock the door. Don't let anyone in but me. Dante! But he was already gone. Emma paced his apartment for 2 hours, checking her phone every 30 seconds. Dante didn't call, didn't text, just left her there, wondering and worrying and imagining all the worst-case scenarios. When the door finally opened, she jumped about a foot in the air. Dante stood in the doorway, and Emma's first thought was blood. There was blood on his knuckles, his shirt. Not a lot, but enough. He looked at her, and his expression was carefully neutral. Are you hurt? Emma asked, crossing to him. No. Then whose blood? His. Emma's breath caught. What did you do? Had a conversation. Dante, he won't bother you again. Dante's voice was flat. I promise you that. Emma looked at his bloody knuckles and felt something complicated twist in her chest. Did you? He's alive, Dante said. Bruised, but alive. I just made sure he understood what would happen if he came near you again. And what happens if he goes to the police? He won't. How can you be sure? Dante's smile was sharp and cold. Because I made sure he understood that going to the police would be worse for him than anything I did tonight. Emma should have been horrified, should have been disgusted. But looking at this man who'd just beaten up her stalker to keep her safe, all she felt was a confusing mix of relief and attraction and love that terrified her with its intensity. I told you not to do anything you can't take back, she whispered. I didn't. Dante crossed to her, cupping her face despite his bloody hands. He's alive. He's walking. And he's terrified enough to stay far away from you. That's all I wanted. You could get in trouble. I won't. You don't know that. Emma. He said her name like a prayer. Trust me. She did. God help her. She did. Emma pulled him down and kissed him, tasting desperation and relief and fear. Dante kissed her back like he was drowning and she was air, his bloody hands careful on her face. I love you, Emma whispered against his lips. She felt him go still, felt the moment the words registered. When he pulled back to look at her, his eyes were wide and dark and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. Say that again, he said hoarsely. I love you. Emma. I know it's crazy. I know it's too fast. I know you're dangerous and this is probably a terrible idea, but I love you, Dante. I love you. He kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring everything into it. When they finally broke apart, they were both shaking. I love you too, Dante said against her mouth. God, I love you so much it scares me. They stood there in his apartment, holding each other, and Emma let herself believe that maybe they could make this work. That maybe love was enough to bridge the gap between her world and his. That maybe she could be with a man who'd threaten murder for her and not lose herself in the process. The restraining order hearing was a week later. Emma was nervous, but Dante's lawyers had prepared her well. They had documentation of everything. The push into traffic, the stalking, the texts, the break-in. They had witnesses, including Dante. They had a case that should have been unwinnable for Marcus. But when Emma walked into the courtroom, Marcus was there with his own lawyer, and the moment he saw her, He smiled. It was that smile that made Emma's blood run cold. That made her realize this wasn't over. The hearing proceeded quickly. Emma gave her testimony, her voice shaking but steady. Dante gave his. The lawyers presented their evidence. It should have been enough. But then Marcus's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "my client admits he may have made some mistakes in handling this breakup. But the evidence shows he's been the victim here. Mr. Rossi has been stalking him, threatening him, and just last week he brutally assaulted my client in a public bar." Emma's heart dropped. Dante's expression didn't change, but she felt him go tense beside her. "Do you have evidence of this assault?" the judge asked. Marcus's lawyer produced photos. Marcus's face bruised and swollen, his ribs wrapped in bandages, a medical report documenting his injuries. "Mr. Rossi has been using his relationship with Ms. Martinez to isolate her and control her," the lawyer continued. "He's violent, dangerous, and my client fears for his life." "That's not true," Emma said, half rising from her seat. "Ms. Martinez," the judge said sternly, "please sit down." Dante's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. "Stay calm," the touch said. "Don't give them ammunition." The hearing continued for another hour. Back and forth accusations and counter-accusations, until Emma's head was spinning. When it finally ended, the judge looked exhausted. "I'm granting a mutual restraining order," she said. "Both parties are to stay at least 500 feet from each other at all times. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. This includes contact through third parties or social media. Do you both understand?" Emma nodded numbly. Marcus smiled that terrible smile again. They left the courthouse in silence. Emma could feel Dante's anger radiating off him in waves, but he didn't speak until they were in his car. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For what?" "For giving him ammunition. If I hadn't, you were protecting me. And now he's using it against us." Emma took his hand. "At least he can't come near me anymore. Neither can I." Dante's jaw was tight. "The restraining order is mutual, Emma. If we're seen together, if someone reports us, you could be arrested too." The reality of that sank in slowly. Emma felt cold. "So that's it?" she whispered. "We just have to stay away from each other?" "No." Dante's voice was firm. "We figure something out." But Emma could see the doubt in his eyes, could see him already calculating, already trying to figure out how to fix this. And she knew, with sinking certainty, that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They tried to be careful, tried to follow the rules. Emma moved back to her apartment, newly repaired, newly secured, but still hers. Dante stayed at his penthouse. They texted constantly but didn't see each other. Couldn't see each other without risking arrest. It was torture. Emma threw herself into work, trying to distract herself. But everywhere she looked, she was reminded of Dante. The security system he'd installed, the locks he'd paid for, the guard who was no longer there because his presence would violate the restraining order. She felt exposed, vulnerable, alone. 3 days after the hearing, she came home to find another text from Marcus. "Miss me yet?" Emma blocked the number immediately, but her hands were shaking. He wasn't supposed to contact her. The restraining order should have prevented this. But here he was, finding ways around it, proving that piece of paper meant nothing. She called Dante. "He texted me again," she said without preamble. Dante swore viciously. "I'm coming over." "You can't. The restraining order. I don't care." "Dante, you could be arrested." "I don't care, Emma. He's violating the order anyway, and you're there alone." "I'm fine. I'm safe. I just wanted you to know." There was a long silence on the other end. When Dante spoke again, his voice was rough. "I hate this," he said. "I hate not being able to protect you." "You are protecting me. You got me the restraining order. You installed security." "It's not enough." It has to be. But they both knew it wasn't. Both knew that Marcus would keep pushing until something gave. And Emma was terrified it would be her. That night she barely slept. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wishing Dante was there, wishing she could feel his arms around her, solid and safe and real. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He can't protect you forever. You'll be mine again soon. Emma's blood turned to ice. She called the police, filed another report, but she knew it wouldn't matter. Marcus was careful. He used burner phones, sent texts that were threatening, but not specific enough to prove intent. He was playing the system, and he was winning. She was reaching for her phone to call Dante when she heard it. A scraping sound at her door. Emma went perfectly still, heart hammering. The security system should have alerted her if someone approached, should have gone off if someone tried to break in. But it was silent. The scraping continued. Metal on metal, someone picking the lock. Emma grabbed her phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. "Someone's trying to break into my apartment," she whispered. The dispatcher started asking questions, but Emma wasn't listening. She was listening to her front door click open. "He's inside," Emma breathed. "Oh God, he's inside." She could hear footsteps in her living room. Slow, deliberate, coming toward her bedroom. Emma did the only thing she could think of. She called Dante. He answered on the first ring. "Emma." "He's here," she whispered. "Marcus is in my apartment." She heard Dante's sharp intake of breath, heard him already moving. "Where are you?" "Bedroom. I called 911, but—" "Lock the door. Block it with something heavy. I'm 5 minutes away. You can't— the restraining order? Screw the restraining order. Lock the door, Emma. Now." Emma lunged for the bedroom door and twisted the lock. She grabbed her dresser and tried to drag it, but it was too heavy. The footsteps were getting closer. "Emma!" Marcus's voice drifted through the door. "I know you're in there." Emma pressed herself against the far wall, phone clutched to her chest. "The police are coming, Marcus. You need to leave." "I'm not here to hurt you." His voice was reasonable, calm. It was the calm that terrified her. "I just want to talk." "Then talk to my lawyer." "Emma," the doorknob rattled. "Open the door." "No." "Open the door." The sudden violence in his voice made her flinch. Emma heard Dante swearing on the other end of the phone. 3 minutes, he said. "Just hold on for 3 minutes." But Marcus was done waiting. Emma heard him step back, heard the moment of silence before he slammed his body against the door. The frame shuddered, but held. He hit it again. The wood began to crack. "Marcus, stop!" Emma screamed. "You were supposed to be mine." Another hit. "We were supposed to be together." "I never wanted this." "You did. Before he poisoned you against me, you loved me." The door frame splintered. One more hit and he'd be through. Emma looked around frantically for a weapon, found nothing but a lamp. She grabbed it, ripping the cord from the wall, and held it like a bat. "I'm armed," she shouted. Marcus laughed. It was a terrible sound. "With what, Emma? A lamp?" How did he know? Had he been watching her through the windows? The thought made her skin crawl. He hit the door again. It burst open and there he was. Marcus, her ex, the man she'd once loved. He looked terrible, wild-eyed and desperate, with bruises still visible on his face from Dante's beating. But worse than the physical damage was the look in his eyes. He was past reason, past sanity. "Put the lamp down," he said. "Stay back. Emma." He took a step forward. "It doesn't have to be like this." "You broke into my apartment because you wouldn't talk to me any other way." His voice rose. "Because you've been hiding behind that criminal boyfriend of yours instead of facing me like an adult. I have a restraining order against you for a reason." That order is garbage, and you know it. Marcus took another step. I love you, Emma. I've always loved you. And if you'd just give me another chance. I gave you 100 chances, Emma's voice cracked. And you showed me who you really are. You stalked me. You threatened me. You pushed me into traffic. That was an accident. It wasn't an accident, the words echoed in the sudden silence. Marcus stared at her, and something in his expression shifted, hardened. Fine, he said quietly. If I can't have you, no one can. He lunged. Emma swung the lamp with all her strength. It connected with his shoulder, sending him stumbling. She ran for the door, but Marcus grabbed her ankle. Emma went down hard, the breath driven from her lungs. She kicked at him, connected with his face, heard him grunt in pain. Then she was up and running. Through the bedroom door, down the hallway, toward the front door that Marcus had left standing open. She could hear him behind her, could hear him shouting her name. Emma burst out of her apartment and into the hallway, ran for the stairs, not trusting the elevator. Behind her, Marcus was gaining ground. He'd always been faster than her, always been stronger. She wasn't going to make it. Then someone grabbed her. Emma screamed, but the grip was familiar. Safe. She looked up into Dante's face, and the relief was so intense she nearly collapsed. I've got you, he said. Then he pushed her behind him and turned to face Marcus. Her ex skidded to a stop, eyes going wide. You can't be here. The restraining order. I don't give a damn about the restraining order. Dante's voice was deadly calm. You broke into her apartment. You chased her. You tried to hurt her. This is between me and Emma. Nothing about Emma is between you and anyone anymore. Dante took a step forward. Marcus took a step back. I told you what would happen if you touched her again. You can't do anything. Not here. Not with witnesses. Try me. There was something in Dante's voice that made the hair on Emma's neck stand up. Something that said he was done playing games. Done with restraining orders and legal channels. Done with letting Marcus exist in Emma's world. Marcus must have heard it too, because he went pale. You're insane, he said, but his voice shook. Both of you. Maybe. Dante's smile was sharp. But I'm the one standing between you and her. And I will stand here for the rest of my life if that's what it takes. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marcus looked between them, calculation and desperation warring on his face. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Dante replied quietly. It is. The police arrived moments later. They found Emma shaking in Dante's arms, Marcus standing in the hallway, and Emma's apartment door broken open. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus was arrested on the spot for violating the restraining order, breaking and entering, and assault. He screamed that Dante was there too, that Dante had violated the order as well. But the officers just looked at Marcus like he was pathetic. Sir, one of them said, you broke into this woman's home. Any protection that order gave you is forfeit. Now get in the car. Emma watched them take him away and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just exhaustion. You okay? Dante asked quietly. Emma looked up at him and started to cry. He held her while she sobbed, right there in the hallway, not caring who saw. Held her while the police took statements. Held her while they documented her broken door and shattered bedroom. Held her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. When they were finally alone again, Dante cupped her face in both hands. You're never going back to this apartment, he said firmly. You're moving in with me. Dante, I'm not arguing about this. He broke in once. He could do it again. And I am done, watching from a distance while he terrorizes you. The restraining order is meaningless now. He violated it. And even if it wasn't, I don't care anymore. I love you, Emma. And I will violate 100 restraining orders if it means keeping you safe. Emma stared at him. At this dangerous, complicated man who'd threatened murder for her, who'd beaten up her stalker, who'd risked arrest to come save her, who loved her with an intensity that should have been terrifying, but instead just felt safe. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? I'll move in with you." Dante's expression softened into something so tender it made her chest ache. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Thank God," he breathed, "because I don't think I could have walked away if you'd said no." They packed her essentials that night, left the rest for later. Emma took one last look at the apartment where Marcus had terrorized her, where she'd hidden and run and been afraid, and felt nothing but relief to leave it behind. Dante's apartment, their apartment now, felt like coming home. He'd already cleared space for her in his closet, his bathroom. Already made room for her in his life, like he'd been expecting her all along. That night, Emma fell asleep in his arms, safe and secure and loved. And for the first time in months, she didn't have nightmares. Marcus was charged with a list of crimes so long Emma stopped counting, with his previous restraining order violation, the breaking and entering, the assault. His lawyer told him he was looking at serious jail time if convicted. He'd be better off taking a plea deal. But Marcus, predictably, refused. He insisted on a trial, insisted on representing himself after his lawyer quit in frustration, insisted that this was all a misunderstanding and Emma would come to her senses. The trial was set for 3 months away. Emma tried not to think about it, tried to just live her life. She moved fully into Dante's apartment, blending her things with his until the space felt like theirs. She met his sister when she came to visit from Milan, a whirlwind of a woman named Sophia, who took one look at Emma and declared her perfect for her brother. "I've never seen him like this," Sophia confided one afternoon while they were shopping. "So happy, so settled. You're good for him." Emma wasn't sure about that, but Dante was good for her. She knew that much. He made her laugh, made her feel safe, made her believe that maybe she deserved good things after all. She also learned more about his work. Not everything. Some things, he said gently, were better left unknown. But enough to understand that yes, the rumors were true. Dante Rossi was connected. His business dealings included things that would make her non-profit working self cringe. He had power in the city, the kind that came from knowing where bodies were buried. Sometimes, literally. Emma should have been horrified, should have run the other way. But every time she thought about leaving, she remembered the night he saved her from Marcus, remembered him standing between her and danger, willing to risk everything to keep her safe. She couldn't reconcile the man who donated anonymously to women's shelters with the man who'd threatened to kill for her. Couldn't square the gentle way he touched her with the violence she knew he was capable of. But somehow, impossibly, they coexisted in the same person. And she loved him. All of him. Even the parts that scared her. 2 weeks before the trial, Dante came home with a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said. Emma's heart sank. Those words never meant anything good. They sat on the couch, and Dante took her hands. "Marcus's lawyer reached out," he said carefully. "He wants to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "If we agree to drop the charges, Marcus will plead guilty to violating the original restraining order and agree to mandatory therapy. He'd do 6 months in jail and 5 years probation, but he wouldn't go to trial for the breaking and entering or the assault." Emma processed that slowly. "So he'd serve less time. Significantly less. And if we don't take the deal, then we go to trial, and based on what my lawyers say, he'll probably be convicted on all counts. He'd be looking at 3 to 5 years. Emma should have wanted that. Should have wanted him locked away for as long as possible. But the idea of sitting through a trial, of reliving everything in front of strangers, of having her life dissected in open court, she felt sick just thinking about it. "What do you think I should do?" she asked quietly. "I think that's entirely up to you." Dante squeezed her hands. "I'll support whatever you decide. If you want to go to trial, we go to trial. If you want to take the deal, we take the deal. But what do you want? Dante's jaw tightened. I want him to rot in prison for the rest of his life. But that's not about what's best for you. That's about me wanting revenge. Emma studied his face. And if I take the deal? Then he serves his 6 months, gets therapy, and hopefully learns to stay the hell away from you. But you don't think he will? No, Dante admitted. I don't. They sat in silence for a long moment. Emma thought about Marcus in court. Marcus testifying. Marcus's lawyer trying to make her look unreliable, trying to suggest she'd overreacted, trying to paint Dante as the real villain. She thought about seeing Marcus's face for days or weeks while the trial dragged on. She thought about just being done with all of it. I want to take the deal, she said finally. Dante searched her face. Are you sure? No, but I'm tired, Dante. I'm so tired of Marcus taking up space in my head. And maybe if he goes to therapy, maybe if he gets help, maybe he'll actually change. He won't. You don't know that. Emma. Please, she squeezed his hands. I need to believe that people can change, that this wasn't all for nothing. Let me take the deal. Dante looked like he wanted to argue, but after a long moment he just nodded. Okay, he said quietly. We'll take the deal. The plea was entered the following week. Marcus stood before the judge, admitted his guilt, and was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, followed by 5 years probation and mandatory therapy. He'd be released in 4 months with good behavior. Emma felt nothing watching him be led away in handcuffs. Not satisfaction, not relief, just a bone-deep exhaustion and a fervent hope that maybe, finally, this was over. For a while, it seemed like it was. Emma settled into her new life with Dante. She went back to work, back to helping women who'd been through what she had. She told her story sometimes, when it helped others feel less alone. She'd survived Marcus. She'd survived his obsession. And now she was building something new with someone who treated her the way she deserved. Dante proposed on a Tuesday. They were cooking dinner together, something they'd started doing regularly, a quiet domestic ritual Emma had come to love. Dante was at the stove, stirring pasta, and Emma was chopping vegetables for a salad. They were talking about nothing and everything, and Emma was laughing at something stupid he'd said when he suddenly went quiet. She looked up to find him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. What? She asked. Marry me. Emma's knife clattered to the cutting board. What? Marry me? Dante repeated. He wasn't smiling. He looked serious, nervous, hopeful. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months. But Emma, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life protecting you, supporting you, loving you. Marry me. Emma's heart was thundering so loud she could barely hear. You're serious? Completely. You don't even have a ring. I have a ring. I've had it for 3 weeks. I've been carrying it around trying to figure out the perfect moment to ask, and then I realized there's no such thing as a perfect moment. There's just you and me, and the fact that I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're going to be mine forever. He pulled a box from his pocket, opened it. The ring inside was beautiful. A simple diamond solitaire that was elegant without being ostentatious. Perfect for her. Emma, Dante said quietly, will you marry me? She should have been scared. Should have been worried about the speed, about his connections, about building a life with a man who lived in the shadows. But looking at him standing there, vulnerable and open, and so full of love, it radiated from him like heat. Emma couldn't find it in herself to be anything but deliriously happy. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, yes, of course, yes. Dante's face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He crossed to her in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms and kissing her like she was oxygen. The ring box was forgotten, dropped onto the counter as he lifted her, spinning her around while she laughed and cried and kissed him back. When he finally set her down, he slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. It fit perfectly. "How did you know my size?" Emma asked, still crying. "I have people who know things." At her look, he grinned. "Your sister helped." Emma's eyes widened. "You talked to my sister?" "Last week. I wanted her blessing." "Did you get it?" "She said if I hurt you, she'd kill me herself." Dante's smile was soft. "I like her." Emma laughed and cried and kissed him again. They never did finish making dinner that night. They planned a small wedding for 6 weeks out, just family and a few close friends. Emma invited her co-workers from the nonprofit. Dante invited his sister and a collection of sharply dressed men who were probably all various levels of criminal, but treated Emma with perfect courtesy. No one talked about what they did for a living. Emma didn't ask. Marcus's release date was scheduled for 2 weeks before the wedding. Emma tried not to think about it, tried to just focus on the happiest time of her life. But as the date grew closer, she found herself getting anxious, jumping at shadows, checking the locks compulsively. Dante noticed, of course. "He won't bother you," he said one night as they were going through seating charts. "How can you be sure?" "Because he knows what will happen if he does." Emma looked up at him. "Did you threaten him again?" "I had someone deliver a message while he was inside." Dante's expression was carefully neutral. "Just a reminder that the restraining order is still active, and that I'm still watching." "Dante, I know you wanted to believe he'd change, that the therapy would help." His hand found hers across the table. "But Emma, men like him don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are. And I won't take chances with your safety." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to believe in rehabilitation and second chances. But she'd worked with enough abuse victims to know the statistics. Know how often abusers promised to change and then did the exact same things again. "Okay," she said quietly. Dante squeezed her hand. "Nothing is going to ruin our wedding. I promise you that." Marcus was released on a Thursday. Emma heard through her lawyer that he'd completed his therapy sessions and was living with his parents across town. The restraining order was still active. He wasn't allowed within 500 feet of her. For 3 days, everything was fine. Then on Sunday, Emma came home from a dress fitting to find Dante in his office, door closed, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the phone. His tone was sharp, angry. When he saw her, he abruptly ended the call. "What's wrong?" Emma asked immediately. "Nothing. Don't lie to me. We had a deal." Dante's jaw tightened. Marcus missed his check-in with his probation officer yesterday. Emma's blood went cold. What does that mean? It means they don't know where he is. But he's supposed to be at his parents'. He left 2 days ago, told them he had a job interview, never came back. The anxiety Emma had been trying to suppress came roaring back. So he's violating his probation. Yes. And he could be anywhere. Yes. He could be here. Emma. He could be watching us right now, waiting for an opportunity, planning something. Emma. Dante was in front of her suddenly, hands on her shoulders. "Look at me. Look at me." She did. His dark eyes were steady, certain. "I will not let him hurt you," Dante said firmly. "Do you understand? I don't care where he is or what he's planning. He will not touch you. You can't be with me every second. Watch me. Dante." "I'm serious, Emma. Until he's found, you don't go anywhere alone. Not work, not the store, nowhere. Either I'm with you or one of my men is. No exceptions." Emma wanted to argue that this was excessive, that she could take care of herself, but the truth was she was scared. Marcus missing his probation check-in, disappearing right before her wedding. It couldn't be a coincidence. "What if he doesn't show up before the wedding?" she asked quietly. "Then we postpone." "I don't want to postpone. And I don't want you walking down the aisle wondering if your stalker ex is going to show up." Dante's hands tightened on her shoulders. "Your safety is more important than any ceremony." Emma knew he was right. Knew postponing was the smart choice. But she was so tired of Marcus dictating her life. So tired of being afraid. "No," she said. "We're not postponing. If he shows up, you deal with him. But I'm not letting him ruin this too." Dante searched her face. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Emma, I'm marrying you in 2 weeks, Dante Rossi. Marcus doesn't get to take that from me." Something shifted in Dante's expression. Pride, maybe. Or love. Or both. "Okay," he said softly, "but you follow my security protocols. No arguments." "No arguments," Emma agreed. The next 2 weeks were tense. Dante was as good as his word. Emma never went anywhere alone. If Dante couldn't be with her, one of his men was. They were polite, professional, and made her feel both safe and slightly like a prisoner. But she didn't complain. Marcus's probation officer issued a warrant for his arrest. The police were looking for him. Emma's lawyer filed additional documentation, but there was no sign of him anywhere. The night before the wedding, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in bed next to Dante, staring at the ceiling, wondering where Marcus was, what he was planning, whether he'd show up tomorrow to ruin everything. "Stop thinking so loud," Dante murmured beside her. "How did you know I was awake?" "Your breathing's different." Emma turned to look at him. In the darkness, she could just make out his profile. "Are you scared?" "Of tomorrow?" "No, I can't wait to marry you." "I meant of Marcus." "No," Dante said simply. "I'm not afraid of Marcus. I'm afraid of you being afraid." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't want to be scared anymore." "Then don't be." Dante rolled to face her, pulling her close. "Tomorrow you're going to walk down that aisle and marry me. And then you're going to be Emma Rossi. And anyone who wants to hurt you will have to go through not just me, but my entire family, my organization, everything I have, and everyone I know. You're going to be protected in ways Marcus can't even comprehend." That's what scares him, Emma realized quietly. That he lost me completely. That he can't even pretend there's a chance anymore. Good. He should be scared. They lay in silence for a moment. Then Emma whispered, "What if he shows up tomorrow? Then I handle it. How? However I need to." Emma knew what that meant. Knew that Dante wouldn't hesitate to do whatever was necessary to protect her, consequences be damned. And the terrible truth was, she was grateful for it. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Dante kissed her forehead. "Now sleep. You need to be rested for tomorrow." Emma closed her eyes and tried. Eventually, wrapped in Dante's arms, she drifted off. The wedding day dawned bright and clear. Emma woke early, nervous energy humming through her. Sophia had stayed over to help her get ready, and she bustled around the apartment like a force of nature, organizing hair and makeup people, arranging Emma's dress, managing 1,000 details Emma hadn't even thought of. "You're going to be beautiful," Sophia said, zipping up Emma's dress. "Dante's going to cry." "Dante doesn't cry. He will today." Sophia smiled at her in the mirror. "I've never seen him love anyone the way he loves you. You're good for him, Emma. You make him human." Emma swallowed hard. "He makes me feel safe." "Then you're perfect for each other." The ceremony was being held at an estate outside the city, something private and secure, with grounds that Dante's people had swept multiple times to ensure there were no surprises. The guest list was small and carefully vetted. If Marcus somehow showed up, he wouldn't get past the gate. Emma kept telling herself that as Sophia drove them to the venue, kept repeating it like a mantra. He won't show up, and if he does, Dante will handle it. Everything will be fine. The estate was beautiful. The ceremony was being held in a garden, with flowers everywhere and chairs set up in neat rows. Emma could see Dante at the altar already, looking devastating in his tuxedo, talking quietly with his best man. When he glanced up and saw the car arrive, his face broke into a smile that made Emma's breath catch. "Ready?" Sophia asked. "Yes," Emma said, and she meant it. They got out of the car. Emma's sister was waiting, bouncing excitedly. "You look gorgeous," her sister squealed, pulling her into a hug. "I can't believe you're getting married." "Neither can I," Emma admitted. Her sister grabbed the bouquet from the car. "Come on, we need to get you to the holding room so you can make your dramatic entrance." They walked into the estate, chattering nervously. Emma was so focused on not tripping over her dress that she almost didn't see him. Almost. Marcus was standing at the end of the hallway, blocking the entrance to the holding room. His hair was disheveled, his clothes rumpled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. And he was staring at Emma with an expression that made her blood run cold. "Hello, Em," he said quietly. Emma's sister gasped. Sophia immediately moved in front of Emma, her hand diving into her purse. For a phone or a weapon, Emma couldn't tell. "You need to leave," Sophia said, her voice hard. "Now!" "I just want to talk to Emma." Marcus's eyes never left Emma's face. "That's all? Just talk." "There's a restraining order." "I know about the restraining order." Marcus took a step forward. Everyone took a step back. "But I'm leaving the country tomorrow. Going somewhere I can start over. I need to tell her something first." "Tell her from 500 feet away," Sophia snapped, but Emma found her voice. "What do you want, Marcus?" He looked at her, and for a moment she saw a flash of the man she'd once loved. The one who'd seemed charming and attentive before everything went wrong. "I wanted to apologize," he said, "for everything. For not being the man you needed. For hurting you. His voice cracked. "For ruining what we had." "You didn't ruin what we had," Emma said quietly. "There was nothing to ruin. You showed me who you really were, and I finally believed you. I know I messed up. But Emma, I'm getting help, real help. And I wanted you to know that before I left. Wanted you to know that I'm going to be better. That's great, Marcus, truly. But you need to leave. Now." "I know, He swallowed hard. "Be happy, okay? With him. Be happy." Then he turned and walked away. Emma stood frozen, watching him go. Part of her wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe he really was getting help. Really was going to change. But a larger part knew better. Knew this was probably just another manipulation. Another play for sympathy. She'd never know which it was. And maybe that was okay. "Are you all right?" Sophia asked carefully. Emma took a shaky breath. Yeah, I'm okay. Should I tell Dante?" "After the ceremony. I don't want him worried right now." Sophia looked skeptical, but nodded. They continued to the holding room, though Emma's hands were shaking as she touched up her makeup. She kept glancing at the door, half expecting Marcus to burst back through. But he didn't. He was gone. When it was time, Emma's sister helped arrange her dress and veil, handed her the bouquet, gave her a fierce hug. "Go get married," she whispered. The music started. Emma took a deep breath and walked out. The moment she saw Dante waiting at the end of the aisle, everything else fell away. Marcus, the fear, the anxiety, all of it disappeared. There was only Dante, watching her walk toward him with such love in his eyes, it made her heart ache. She'd been right. He was crying. Emma was crying too by the time she reached him. Dante took her hands, and they were both shaking. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "You're not so bad yourself." The ceremony passed in a blur. Emma barely heard the words, barely managed to repeat her vows without sobbing. All she could focus on was Dante, his hands holding hers, his voice steady and sure, his eyes never leaving her face. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Dante pulled her close and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. Emma kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, love and gratitude and promise and hope. When they finally broke apart, the small crowd was cheering. Dante kept his arm around her waist as they walked back down the aisle, and Emma felt like she was floating. The reception was perfect. Dinner, dancing, toasts that made her laugh and cry. Dante barely left her side all night, and Emma wouldn't have wanted him to. This was what she'd wanted. What she'd been afraid Marcus would take away. It was only later, when they were dancing slowly together, that Emma told him. "Marcus was here earlier," she said quietly. Dante went rigid. "What?" "Before the ceremony. He wanted to apologize." "And I told him to leave. He did. Said he's leaving the country tomorrow." Dante's jaw was tight. "If he'd touched you, he didn't. He just talked. And then he left." They swayed in silence for a moment. Emma could feel Dante's anger radiating through him, but he kept his movements gentle. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. "I'm married to you," Emma said simply. "I'm perfect." Dante's expression softened. "Mrs. Rossi?" "That's me." "I like the sound of that." "So do I." They danced until late, until Emma's feet hurt and her face hurt from smiling. When they finally left for their honeymoon suite, it was past midnight. Dante carried her over the threshold, literally carried her, making her laugh and protest, and set her down gently in the middle of the lavish room. "Happy?" he asked. Emma looked at this man who'd saved her life, who'd protected her, who'd loved her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but instead just felt right, who'd given her security and safety and a future she'd been afraid to hope for. "Deliriously," she said. Dante smiled and pulled her close, and as he kissed her, Emma knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Marcus was her past, but Dante was her future, and God, what a future it would be.